What is up, ladies and gentlemen? I am Spencer Kyte, your friendly neighborhood Spencer man, and this is 10 Things I Like for UFC 285. We are finally here, and I am fired all the way up. This is the best fight card of the year, taking place Saturday at T-Mobile Arena in Las Vegas, headlined by the return of Jon Jones against Ciryl Gane for the vacant heavyweight title, Valentina Shevchenko defending her flyweight title against Alexa Grasso. Important, meaningful, compelling fights up and down the lineup, top to bottom, not a miss on this card. It is going to be electric. It is going to be amazing. I cannot wait to get into it, and we're not going to waste any more time. Thing number one, Jon Jones is back, and he's fighting Ciryl Gane. I know that sounds really basic and really simple, but Jon Jones is back. For 3 years, we've been sitting, waiting, wondering if Jon Jones is going to return, when he's going to make his debut at heavyweight, what's he's going to look like, myriad questions, all of which I posed and tried to work my way through over on OSDB Sports yesterday. Please go check that out. It's in my timeline on Twitter if you would like to just go there. It's a little easier. It's amazing. This is one of those fascinating fights where I don't think there's any way to be too excited, to have too much anticipation. Now, obviously, everybody's got to make weight. Everybody's got to remain healthy and get into the octagon on Saturday. But provided all of that happens, this is as captivating a fight as I can remember in quite some time. And I say that with all due respect to the terrific fights that we have had already this year and over the last few years, as great as Makhachev and Volkanovski was. And it was terrific. This is something different, because this is a whole bunch of questions that we've been wrestling with for a number of years. Jon Jones has talked about eventually moving to heavyweight for quite some time. And now it's finally happening. And it's happening against the guy that has already held the interim title, that fought for the undisputed title last January and lost, that moves differently than any other heavyweight you're going to run into in this division. And it's a tremendous matchup. I've never been the biggest Jon Jones, fanboy, die hard. Like, I can absolutely acknowledge that he is a tremendous fighter and honestly one of the most talented, skilled athletes I've ever seen compete live and in person. But I've never been the guy that was like, oh my God, it's Jon Jones fight week. Because for the last little while, it felt like a foregone conclusion when he stepped into the cage that he was just going to win. And he was probably going to win in dominant fashion. And that starts to get, and I know I'm the guy that often rails against this, but with Jon, it started to get a little bit stale for me because there weren't finishes. And it felt like for a long time, he started to play safe a little bit. It's why the second Alexander Gustafsson fight was so great to me, because we saw that glimmer of Jon Jones again, of this guy that when he wants to, he can go out there and finish and dominate whoever he wanted in the 205-pound weight class. He can't be careful on Saturday. It's just not an option. You can't go out there and fight conservatively and not try to take this fight to Ciryl Gane, because if you do, that man will knock you out. And then your debut and your long-awaited return turns into a loss, and arguably your first loss in the UFC and in your career. And it becomes a whole different story. So this is full of questions, of compelling elements. It is a fascinating, fascinating fight, and I cannot wait for Saturday's main event. Even though I'm looking forward to everything else on this card, when this main event starts to roll out, when the lights dim and Gane starts walking and then Jones makes the walk, and I'm sure we're going to get the same walkout tracks that we've always gotten from Jon, I can tell you right now, I'm going to get the chicken skin. I'm going to get the butterflies. I'm going to be sitting in my den across the hall, feeling a little just queasy and nervous. And I wish I was on press row for this one, because this is one of those close the laptop and just sit back and see what happens kind of fights. I'll have to get back on press row later this year to feel this again. Item number 2, Valentina Shevchenko's mindset and approach. Had a bunch of questions yesterday, or had a question yesterday about Valentina Shevchenko, whether she's slipping or just had a bad performance last year at UFC 275 against Taila Santos. But the one thing that never wavers with Shevchenko, and is one of the things that I find so amazing about her, amongst many things, is that her mindset and her approach has always been, give me the next person in line. Whoever that is, whoever's ready, bring them to me. So I spoke to her at the sort of start of January to just catch up, do a piece for UFC.com, sort of letting everybody know what she's been up to and where she's been, because she hadn't fought since June. And so wanted to find out, was there an injury? Was there something in her life that she needed to take some time for, or what was the situation? And she said, no, I've been waiting to fight. I was hoping to fight in the fall. That didn't come to fruition. I'm ready to go. And so whoever's ready, let's go. Whether it's Manon Fiorot or it's Alexa Grasso, let's go. When I told her that Fiorot was injured and wouldn't be back till the summer, she said, great. Guess it's you and me, Alexa Grasso. And here we are. She has always and forever been ready to put this belt on the line against whoever's next. And that's a thing that you don't always see. It's a rare commodity in MMA these days, whether we're talking about champions or just competitors in general. There's not a lot of the name doesn't matter, bring me whoever anymore. There's a lot more, let me pick and choose my spots. Let me figure out the matchup that makes the most sense. And I understand it all, like from a business standpoint and a career protecting standpoint, I understand it. I'm not necessarily knocking those people that make those business decisions. Fully understand. But it makes someone like Shevchenko all the more appealing to me when she comes out and just says, whoever's next. And she'll say it if she wins this one too. If she goes out and beats Alexa Grasso on Saturday, she will just say, whoever's next. Whether it's Fiorot when she's healthy and ready to go, or Erin Blanchfield, or someone else. Whether Zhang Weili wants to move up and get some, whether she wants to go up and Amanda Nunes says, yeah, all right, let's do this one again. She'll be ready for whoever it is. And she will train and prepare and get ready because she just loves this. And that's a really appreciated thing for me. Item number 3, the next challenge for Shavkat Rakhmonov. I feel like we're in an interesting point with Rakhmonov right now as he gets ready to fight Jeff Neal on Saturday. In that, he's ranked below him, never beaten anybody ahead of him in the rankings just yet, like ahead of Jeff Neal, not ahead of himself. And yet he's a massive favorite. He's expected to go out and win rather handily. And so I'm so fascinated by fights like this because I can sit here and say and understand and recognize all the things that make Rakhmonov special. And he has looked terrific. 4-0 in the UFC, all finishes, 16-0 overall, all finishes. Dude is legit. But same with everybody. You have to get through the tests. You have to get through the challenges. And I think a little bit people underplay and downplay how good Jeff Neal is. I don't know if that's because of those 2 losses to Wonderboy Thompson and Neil Magny when he was coming back from dealing with sepsis and being in the hospital and things like that, or if it's just he's the guy that's going to forever be a little bit underrated. If you go back and look at his fights before those 2 losses, there's a good win over Bilal Muhammad that has aged very nicely. And then the fight against Vicente Luque was one-way traffic for the majority of the fight, and he gets him out of there. So this is a big test for Rakhmonov on Saturday. And how he comes through it is going to dictate a lot of the way we speak about him going forward, because this could be the moment where he stumbles and has to take a half step back, but it could also be the fight where he just gets rocketed up the rankings and into a fight with a top 5 opponent next time out. Because when you get to 5-0, and if it's another finish, and you've gone Jeff Neal and Neil Magny back to back, there's not a lot left standing in between you and the title. He said as much in the story that I posted yesterday on UFC.com when I spoke to him ahead of this fight. And I think he's right. If he goes out and dominates on Saturday, he's in title contention. And then we're talking about a matchup with a Gilbert Burns or a Bilal Muhammad or a Hamzat Chimaev or Colby Covington if he comes back, where we get this next big test. He's in the spot where it's big test after big test. I'm not 100% sure that he can pass them all without a setback, but I sure do want to see him try. Item 4, a huge matchup at lightweight. Mateusz Gamrot steps in for Dan Hooker against Jalen Turner, and I adore this fight. I'm a big Gamrot fan, have been from pre-UFC days, have loved him since he's come over to the UFC and shown everybody else that wasn't paying attention when he was over in KSW winning 2 belts that he is a legit top 10 lightweight in the UFC and in the world. It's fine that he lost to Beneil Dariush last time out. Benny Daggers, as the boys call him, is a really good fighter. And Jalen Turner's just one of those guys right now that is on the ascent and everything seems to be clicking, but he's getting that tough test right now. So it's 5 straight wins, all finishes. He's earned all of his victories over his career by stoppage. He's 27. He's big, tall, long, powerful, great finishing instincts, coming off a wonderful performance against Brad Riddell last year. And now he gets a top 10 test. And now it's just time to see. Kind of similar to Rachmanov. Are you ready to go forward and just be in contention right now? Or do you need to catch a loss to figure out some of the little holes and little fixes that you need to make in order to keep going forward? Turner is the kind of guy that it wouldn't surprise me if he wins this fight at all. It wouldn't surprise me if we're watching right before our eyes the ascent of a new contender in the lightweight division. He's been around for a little bit. He's trained with some very good people. He has some dynamic skills. Feels like they're coming together. But this is a tough fight. Gamrot's the real deal. He can do some stuff. And really, this is one of those situations where as much as I wouldn't be surprised if Jalen Turner wins, I also wouldn't be surprised if he loses handily. It's just a difficult matchup, and it's why I love this fight so much. This is tough for both guys. Gamrot wants to get back in the win column, obviously, but he's in tough against a guy that great finisher, big power, huge physical advantages, 7-inch reach advantage in this fight, tons of height advantage. Flip side, Turner's in with a guy that is, 30 fights into his career or 25 fights into his career, only lost 3 times. 2-weight world champion in KSW. One of those losses is a very close split decision to Guram Kutateladze. The other is to the current number 1 contender, in my books, in the lightweight division. It was a terrific fight. Terrific fight. If this was the main event of a fight night card somewhere and we got 5 rounds of this, I would be overjoyed. I'm glad to see it on Saturday because I don't want to have to wait longer for it. But this is a great fight. People need to be hyped about this one. Item 5, Bo Nickal's promotional debut. While I said yesterday that I'm not necessarily sold on his elite championship upside, I'm still absolutely looking forward to this fight on Saturday because, and every fight after this, truthfully, for the next little while, because I'm just curious to see how this goes. Nickal is one of the most decorated collegiate wrestlers to come into the UFC in quite some time. A 3-time national champion, 4-time All-American, absolute powerhouse at Penn State. Won the Big Ten Athlete of the Year, won the Hodge Trophy, and has transitioned thus far into MMA seamlessly. Now, as I said yesterday, it's easy to look great against scrubs. And he's looked great against scrubs, with all due respect to the scrubs that he's beaten. What he's shown and what makes him even more intriguing is that it wasn't just straight wrestling and rough you up and ride out victories, grind out victories. He's shown that there's some transition skills in there, that there's some scrambling skills in there, that he has some submission attacks to his game. The finish over Donovan Beard in his second Contender Series win is a very good win, transitioning to a triangle off his back to get the finish. So I want to see how these last couple months of further training has progressed his game and where he can get to. I do think he rolls through Jamie Pickett on Saturday. I think this is another first-round finish and another dominant performance, but I'm still captivated by it. I'm still drawn to this fight because right now Bo Nickal is one of those guys. He's just a giant ball of questions. And each time he steps into the cage is going to be another test of how far he's progressed and how far he might be able to go. Middleweight is in dire need of guys like Bo Nickel, of prospects that can bring some life and energy and create some intrigue in a division that often feels very same and very stale. So let's see how he starts on Saturday. Great fight to kick off the main card. Going to bring everybody in, absolutely draw people in because we want to see and we know this is a guy that's got all the upside, all kinds of people hyped about him. Let's see if he can start living up to it on Saturday. Item 6, a middleweight litmus test between Derek Brunson and Dricus du Plessis. This is very much about du Plessis. I was going to call him DDP, but he's not DDP. There's only one. Shout out to Diamond Dallas Page. It's a big test for Still Knox. He's looked good so far. There's no denying that he's done everything right thus far. 4-0 in the UFC, 3 finishes, good decision win over Brad Tavares in there as well. And now he gets another test against the longtime sort of gatekeeper to the upper echelon, the guy at the VIP door who's got the checklist, and you got to be on that list and beat Derek Brunson in order to get into contention. I'm fascinated by this fight because there's so many different little layers to it, right? Derek Brunson has talked about retiring, and I was under the impression that the Cannonier fight was going to be his last fight. Goes out, he loses that one, and now he's back about a year later. And so I want to see, is this a guy that's getting ready to exit and therefore not as locked in, focused, polished, good as he's been in the past? And people want to, he's not how Derek Brunson has been really good for a really long time. Kind of fits that Neil Magny mold at middleweight. Guys like that deserve respect. Brunson deserves all the props in the world. But now we get to see what du Plessis can do, because this is a tough out against the guy that's going to come out and wrestle and test your cardio and test your conditioning right out of the gate. And it's only 3 rounds, so he doesn't have to manage things as much. He can come out and go at you hard and try to get you out of there. And we get to see what du Plessis can do. He's looked very good thus far in getting those victories. He's not a guy that looks good in the cage, like in terms of his movements and his mechanics, and he always seems tired. But like the results are there and you can't knock the results. And so now he gets another test, and I'm looking forward to seeing it. Item number 7, an all-Brazilian flyweight battle between Viviane Araújo and Amanda Ribas. This is a really intriguing fight. I spoke to Amanda Ribas yesterday morning. She talked about 115 is where she wants to continue to compete, but 125 gives her the opportunity to fight a little more regularly and just say yes to fights, not have to cut as much weight. And I posed the question to her of like, why not stay at flyweight? Because the 3 people that have beaten Viviane Araújo in the UFC all fought for gold. The last of whom is fighting for gold on Saturday night, Alexa Grasso. And she says, hey, maybe, you never know. This is such a fascinating fight because I think it's going to tell us what the upside is for Amanda Ribas, because we know who and what Vivi is. She's 35, 36 years old now, pretty settled into who she is. Very good kickboxer, can wrestle and grapple a little bit, good gas tank, little bit of pop, tough out, right? You've got to be an elite competitor to get by Vivi. And so we're going to see if Amanda Ribas is that. She lost last time out at this weight to Caitlin Chikagian, who is another tough out and presents some different challenges with her length and her kickboxing and her movement. But this is one of those fights that if Amanda Ribas goes out and looks good and gets a victory, gets herself back into the win column, we could see her join this class of emerging fighters working their way forward with hopes of dethroning Valentina Shevchenko or winning UFC gold at some point, should Alexa Grasso dethrone Valentina Shevchenko on Saturday. Really interesting fight. Really curious to see how it plays out. It's a good fight. It's a competitive fight. Can't wait to see it. Item number 8, Ian Garry returns. Yesterday on One Question, I had some questions about Ian Garry. I feel like I kind of put a challenge out there to Ian Garry to come out and have a big performance against Song Kenan on Saturday, because it feels like a spot where he needs to. That doesn't mean I'm not excited to see him compete. Doesn't mean I'm not looking forward to seeing the 25-year-old Irishman return to the octagon. It feels like it's been forever, and it hasn't been forever. It hasn't even been a year. But he's a guy that we have been so invested in over his first 18 months in the UFC that these big long breaks, that isn't even that big of a long break, feels like missed time. And now he's got to make up for missed time. This is very much a winnable and a potential statement fight for Ian Garry, with all due respect to Song Kenan, who is 32 years old, coming off a year layoff, knocked out in the first round last time out. This is a go out and get one opportunity for Ian Garry. And I'm curious to see if he can have that kind of performance. If he can go out there and do that and sort of reignite some of the real excitement that there was about him when he arrived in the UFC and coming out of that first fight against Jordan Williams. As I said yesterday, I understand the approach last year of getting some time, of getting an invaluable 30 minutes of octagon time against Darian Weeks and Gabe Green, working on some of the stuff live against live opponents that you've been working on in the gym. All of it makes sense. Really want to see if he can come out and make a statement on Saturday. Item number 9, another look at Cameron Simon. Had the chance to speak to the South African bantamweight here a couple of days ago. Check it out on the YouTube page. Find it in my feed. I think the world of this kid. And he's a guy, very early on, Sean staked his claim to Jamal Hill. I'm going to stake my claim to Cameron Simon. This is a guy that's going to be a contender in a few years. I think it's going to be a few years simply because he's 22. The division is flush with talent, and so there's no real need to hustle him along too quickly. But the thing that really stands out to me, outside of the fact that he's undefeated, good finisher, all of those things, is the poise and just understanding that this kid has about his craft. He's all in on this. He's 22 going on 35 in terms of his mindset, his approach, the way he structures his life around, this is the thing I do, and I want to be great at it. And then you see him in the octagon, and he's poised beyond his years. I know it doesn't necessarily make sense to some people, but you look at his fight on Contender Series where Joshua Wong Kim comes out guns blazing in the first round and gets ahead of Cameron Simon. And it puts him in a position where he's got to win the last 2 rounds in order to win this fight or get a stoppage. And he's just measured the whole way through. There's no nervous energy about him. He just goes out and handles his business, gets a 3rd round stoppage in that fight, makes his debut, gets an opponent change. The guy that comes in, Stephen Kozlow, is probably a little more competitive and active and dangerous than Cameron Simon probably thought, and his team probably thought going in. He loses a point in the 2nd round for an illegal knee. And he's again put in that position where you got to get a finish if you want to get this victory. Because if this goes to the cards, even if you win 2 rounds, you have the point deduction. So that's probably going to put us in a spot where we're looking at a draw. And he just goes out and finishes. And it's clinical and it's not hurried. Kid feels like he's the real deal. Now, this test with Mana Martinez, this fight with Mana Martinez on Saturday is another test. It's another opportunity to test some of those thoughts. I like the matchup. I think he wins. I think he wins handily at that. And I just think this is somebody that we need to, starting now, pay attention to. Just keep his name in mind. Keep it on, write it down on your whiteboard, put it in your notes package, set a little reminder on Twitter that anytime he gets mentioned as having a fight coming up, you get a little ping so that you can remember and pay attention. Because I think he's going to develop into the real deal. And I want to say that now on March 1st, as I'm recording this, March 2nd, as you're watching it, that I think he's going to get there. I think this is a top 10 fighter inside of, let's say, 5 years. And look, I know that sounds like a long time, but 5 years goes by real quick. And he'll only be 27. Last one before we get out of here, Farid Basharat's debut. So as I said yesterday, I've had the pleasure of speaking with Farid's older brother, Javid, a few times before these fights in his UFC career. He's had 3, he's 3-0. And every time he's talked about, not only is his brother his greatest training partner and such an asset to him in the training room, but that he's got to post wins because little brother's coming and he doesn't want to fall behind little brother. There's some real older brother, younger brother competitive shit going on here that I identify with completely as a younger brother of a 2-sibling, 2-boy household. Fared like his older brother, graduated from the Contender Series. He is undefeated, 9-0 as a pro, 4-0 as an amateur, so 13 consecutive victories. Doesn't know what it's like yet to walk into the octagon, walk into a cage, and not come out with his hand raised. That's an interesting thing. That's an interesting piece. And he gets a fight here against Damone Blackshear, who looked good in his debut, fighting up a division against Yusuf Zalal, battled him to a draw, short notice, good fight. This is a good first test for Fared Basharat. And if he is anything like his brother, if he's anything like their close friend Amir Albazi, and frankly, anything like a bunch of the talent that's been coming out of Extreme Couture and Dewey Cooper's gym over these last couple of weeks, couple of months, we might see a real big performance early in the night on Saturday at UFC 285. This is, as I said, off the top, the best card of the year by far, so far. It is amazing. I cannot wait to sit down and record the preview show with the boys and let all of you see that as we go deep on this card. I can't wait to sit down and make some picks and some plays with IO later this week on the Severe Picks and Plays. And I can't wait for Saturday night. This is the most hype I've been in some time, and I'm the guy that gets hyped for just about everything. So you know this is something special when I'm this excited on a Wednesday morning here in Abbotsford, British Columbia. Can't wait for Saturday night. It's going to be a good time. Thank you for watching. Check out all the work we're doing on this platform, on the Severe YouTube page, on the website itself. Check out the Patreon, SevereMMA.com/pints. It's the start of the month. It's the best time to get in on all of the content that is there. It's loads of good stuff. Go check it out. Check out all the boys on Twitter as well. Know that we love you. We appreciate you. We hope you're getting hype, because we are. UFC 285 is going to be a banger. We will see you tomorrow and look forward to Saturday with you.